To begin with, I will maybe introduce a little bit about myself. Yeah, and thanks for the welcome from Natalie. So I'm Yufeng Yang, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Minnesota, the Department of Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering. And I also graduated from this department last year. And my research background is actually agricultural sustainability and productivity. So I use different type of models, such as crop models and also machine learning models to simulate the responses of crop yield and also other environmental impacts, the responses of them to different types of agricultural management. So I'm very glad to have this chance to be here and give this seminar, and also appreciate the chance to communicate with all of you. I believe that you are all the students are undergrads, so yeah, it's a very good chance to talk about my research and see how it can stimulate your future, maybe your future research interest. And and today, yeah, the topic is sustainable agriculture and forestry management. And here is our goals. There are two goals I think we can accomplish. One is to get to know the cropping systems and the challenges associated with conventional agriculture. And second is to learn about the principles, practices, and the research frontiers of sustainable management in agriculture and forestry. The agenda will be in the beginning, we will have a warm-up activity. And then we will get to know about conventional agriculture and then sustainable agriculture. And for the sustainable forestry management, I have to say I have only limited knowledge on that, so I will give a overview of some recent studies that I found very interesting instead of diving deep into the practices. And in the end, we will learn about carbon market and MMRV. So that's the agenda. Let's get started. So here is a map of the global distribution of a type of crop. So I want you to give me an answer what crop it is. So the greener the region, the higher production of that crop from that region. Maybe you can speak out or type your answers in the chat. Oh, I see answer maize from Brandon. Yeah, it's correct. So I guess this one uh is not as challenging, um, because we see first the most significant pattern is in the U.S. Midwest, which we is known as the Corn Belt. So that's the highest the this area in the Midwest produce about one third of global maize production. So yeah, the answer is correct. It's maize. And one thing to mention is that the scale bar here, those numbers are average regional output. So it's for each dot, it's a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer area. So it's the average output from an area in that area. So it's not the actual yield from the field. And I list out the actual field yield of maize. Here we can see that globally it's about 6 ton per hectare yield, and in the US it's almost doubled. Uh, and the factors that influence the yield level of corn is a combination of environment, management and also the genetics because you can use different variety of crop. So let's get into the second one. We notice that it's widespreading in Asia. Can anyone tell me what crop it is? Palm oil? Not really. Okay, yeah, we see the correct answer already. Yeah, it's rice. So this one, the pattern we can use to identify it is that East Asia, South Asia, and also Southeast Asia are the major production area. So it is rice, and it's also one of the most widespread crop in the world, and it's also highly productive. We can see the yield is lower than corn, but it's still a very productive cereal crop. Let's go to the next one. This one we can see is very widely distributed. I saw an answer from Francis, and it's correct, yeah. So this one is wheat. Uh, we don't even need those options. Yeah, you guys are really good at it. Uh, so yeah, we can see that from Europe, Asia, America, North and South America, and also Australia. Australia, we didn't see that much of green in previous maps, but here, yeah, here it is. So the yield of wheat is lower than rice, but it's also one of the most common crop that is being grown around the world. And this one, I think it's getting uh, a little bit more difficult. You, can anyone keep up with the game? I saw sorghum. It's not sorghum. So this one, a hint is that it's not a cereal crop. And also another hint is to just look at those hotspots. It's in here, South America, like here, Brazil, and here it's, I think, Colombia and Africa and some Southeast Asia. And let me check the answers. I see some answers coming in, but uh, not those. So let me give you some option. Three options. Can anyone have a guess? Okay, I think I saw the correct answer from Brennan again. Yeah, it is coffee, and I think yeah, Colombia, Brazil, and also Vietnam in Asia. Those are countries that's famous for coffee. But also, yeah, it's reasonable to take like cocoa as another answer because there's a big overlap in the production region. And the last one, I think this one is the most challenging one. And if you think I should give out some options, yeah, let me know, but let's try. Uh, a hint is that it's a type of tree crop and it produces nuts. I think maybe let me give out the options. Oh, I see two answers, the same, and they are both correct. Yeah, that's true. It's cashew. So the number one, or like the most, the top three producing region or countries of cashew is West Africa, India, and Vietnam. But for both pistachio and almond, the US is the number one producer. Yeah, so that's all of the warm up here. We have learned about the global cropping systems a little bit through those maps and also the yield of different type of crops. And let's get into the conventional agriculture. So what concerns or what challenges that is there are there with conventional agriculture? So there are typically economic and also environmental concerns in conventional agriculture, including greenhouse gas emission, soil health degradation that will lead to uh, a yield influence, and also water environment degradation, and the chemical surplus and contamination. And for each one, we will go into some examples to uh, illustrate a little bit more. First, for greenhouse gas emissions, we know that they are the cause of global warming and climate change. And we probably know that the number one cause is carbon dioxide, CO2 emission. And here this chart shows that the contribution from the top three greenhouse greenhouse gases. Number one is CO2, and number two is methane, and the number three is nitrous oxide. So for the top three greenhouse gas emission, how do we compare them in this chart using the same scale? So it's not by volume or mass of the gas simply. It's actually using a metric called global warming potential. So this global warming potential is converting different greenhouse gas into a CO2 equivalent by comparing their heat absorption capacity and also their atmospheric lifetime. So after the conversion, we will have a number for each type of this greenhouse gas. We can see that for N2O, it's much stronger than CO2. It's about 300 times stronger than CO2 in terms of global warming effect. And for methane, it's about 30 times stronger than CO2. And in terms of different sectors, we can see that from here, agricultural, forestry, and land use actually take up about 18% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, which is not a small number. And to even unfold the part of greenhouse gas emission from agriculture, we will see that it is the largest contributor to atmospheric to nitrous oxide and the methane emissions. Especially for N2O nitrous oxide emissions, it's leading by a great margin comparing to other sectors. So it's a very important sector that we need to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. And the second concerns, let's look at the soil health degradation. I think there is a previous seminar that talked about soil health. So I will assume that you all know a little bit about SOC, which is soil organic carbon. So it's a very important indicator of the soil health and the fertility. And the loss of SOC will cause a damage in crop yield and the degradation in soil health. And the major pathways of SLC loss, including physical and chemical way. So the chemical ways from these diagrams, you see notice that there are many arrows and the CO2. Uh, so that's the major pathway of SLC loss, which is the decomposition of soil organic carbon, and that will produce CO2 and emit into the atmosphere. And the factors that influence the decomposition of SOC will influence the loss of SOC. So SOC chemical loss pathway is uh, through the heterotrophic respiration. In soil, there are many microbial, and their respirations will consume uh, soil organic matters and also nutrients, and that produces CO2. And the factors influence respiration includes water, oxygen, and temperature. So those activities that change those factors will affect SOC loss. For example, for cultivation, we use machine to till the soil, which expose soil to a higher temperature and also change the oxygen and the water dispersion in soil. That will lead to a speed up in carbon loss, in SOC loss. And another pathway is the physical pathway. It's just simply SOC taken away by wind and the water. So after talking about those pathways, we can look at those causes of SOC loss in agricultural and forestry management. First, erosion and water transport, that's the physical pathway. Deforestation, that will change the temperature in the topsoil. So, and aggressive tillage, that's also changing the soil structure, temperature, and the water communication. And overgrazing, intensive cultivation, uh, both similar, changing the surface and the structure of soil. And the climate change is also a factor that leading to a higher respiration and a higher rate of SOC consumption. So those are the major causes of SOC loss. And here shows some field level evidence of SOC loss. We have seen in the past century that in these plots called Morrow plots, which is located on the campus of UIUC. So it's been measured, the SOC has been measured over the past century, and we have seen a great decrease of SOC by about 23 to 35% in this field that has been lost. And another environmental challenge is hypoxia, ocean hypoxia, especially specifically. So ocean hypoxia is the coastal area that has a reduced level of oxygen. Um, so with reduced level of oxygen, fish and other marine life cannot live and survive. So it caused a zone um, known as dead zone. We can see that there are many such dead zones around the world, the coastal areas. And the major reason of the dead zone formation is nutrition pollution. So dead zones are often formed near the delta area of big rivers. For example, here is it's the delta region of Mississippi River. So a big river carries water with many nutrients and run into the ocean. So those nutrients come from the basin area that is largely farmland and the cropping systems. So those nutritious water run into ocean and it will stimulate the growth of algae. And after those algae died, it will sink and decompose in the bottom of water. And that will consume oxygen in the water and reduce the level of oxygen. So why there are so many nutrients in the water of the rivers and it's actually come from agricultural system. That's the major source of those nutrients. Um, Talking about nutrients, the number one nutrients that crops need is nitrogen. So nitrogen fertilizer is is the most widely used chemical in cropping systems. And here we have a metric called nitrogen use efficiency. It is the ratio of nitrogen output to nitrogen input. So we can see that around the world, the nitrogen use efficiency for many countries are below 50%, which means only less than half of those nitrogen we applied to soils were actually absorbed by crop. So more than half of nitrogens will be left in soil, and those nitrogens will be vulnerable to other types of loss, such as taken away by water, then go into ocean with the river. And yeah, after learning about those challenges in conventional agriculture, so that's the reason we bring sustainable agriculture as a solution. And the definition of it is that uh, it is a agricultural model that conserve natural resources and also promotes environmental friendly practices to meet the current and the future food need. And in the US, there is actually a legal definition of sustainable agriculture. It lists out more detailed requirements such as to satisfy human food and fiber needs, to enhance the environmental quality, to make the efficient use of non-renewable resources, and to sustain the economic viability. Those actually are very important laws laws that we can follow to identify or develop a sustainable agricultural practice. So here comes the three principles of sustainable agricultural practices. The number one is economic profitability. So it's important that we can ensure efficient management of resources so that farmers and other participants of agriculture can make a profitability out of their practice. Second one is environmental protection. And also third one, social well-being. Those three are the principles of sustainable agricultural management. And from here, we will go into some practices of sustainable agriculture that's being widely used or widely promoted. The number one is crop rotation. It means you grow more than one type of crop in a specific site over time instead of a single type of crop. It is the most common method, most common sustainable agricultural practice. And the benefit of crop rotation is that it can reduce crop pest and disease because oftentimes those insects or pests they would prefer certain type of crop. So if you switch crop, uh, let's say 1 year after a certain type of crop, it can reduce the uh, suitability for certain type of pest to grow in that field. So it is a practical way to reduce crop pest and disease. And also, certain type of crop can bring nutritions to soil, such as legume. Uh, so commonly, soybean and different types of peas, they are legume and they can provide nitrogen through nitrogen fixation. It's a biological process that produce nitrogen and it will go into soil and enhance the soil health. So we can see that in the US from this chart that actually crop rotation is very widely used for corn, soybean, and wheat. Those are also the most common type combination of crop rotations. Soy combine, which is a two crop combination, and the corn, soybean, wheat is a three crop rotation. And here is some result from a study. I want to show you that how crop rotation can influence the carbon and nitrogen in soil. So here we can see that it has like two curves. One is continuous corn, and the one is corn soybean rotation. And the results are all about the corn outcomes in the corn phase. So it is field experiment data from Illinois, and we see that with a lower nitrogen rate, rotation actually produce higher green carbon of corn, so it has a higher productivity uh, with rotation, especially at a low nitrogen application level. And it also changed the liter carbon and sequentially changed the SOC stock in soil. And also it has some influence on nitrogen too. For leaching and into emission and ammonia emission, it has some difference between rotation and the continuous corn. We see that rotation can produce higher uh, emission and leaching when the nitrogen application is low. That's because the soybean as a legume is fixing more nitrogen into soil, so that will lead to a little bit higher nitrogen leaching and emission when the fertilizer is applied at low or zero level. But when the nitrogen fertilizer rate goes up, it actually flipped the uh, the amount. So that's something we need to negotiate in the field level when we apply a certain practice. We need to focus on both the SOC into different aspects of the outcomes. And also, there's another study take advantage of remote sensing and a mathematical models to quantify the benefits of rotation on crop yield. On the left, it shows the benefits for corn yield. So we can see that actually in the Midwest, it increase the corn yield by about a half ton to a 1.5 tons uh, per hectare. Yeah, that's a margin estimated by this study. And for soybean yield, because soybean has a lower yield, so the margin, the increase of this yield is also lower. But we can see also is enhancing rotation is enhancing both corn and soybean yields in the Midwest. And the next practice is cover cropping. It is also a common practice, sustainable agricultural practice. So it refers to the plants or crops that grown not for harvest but to protect and improve soil. It's usually planted after the harvest of the crop that we grow in the major season. So cover crop brings benefits including prevent erosions, especially in a fallow season, and it suppress weeds, and it also brings organic matter and the nutrients to soil. That's a very important aspect. So usually cover crops, we will not harvest them from field, but we will till them back into soil. So the residue of cover crops can live in the soil and increase the carbon stock. And the common example here in the US is ryegrass and crescent clover. Those are two common cover crops used in the US. And also here I want to show that there are field level evidence that indicates SOC stock is increased by cover crop. So here we have a bar on the left, which is without cover crop, and on the right is with cover crop. We see that the SOC change is higher, both from the in a site in Illinois, and also we see more long term. We see longer term evidence from model simulation on the right. This figure shows the model simulation result. Each of those curves represent a scenario indicating without cover crop and with cover crop. We also see that with cover crop can increase the SOC over time. And it's important that we have a baseline scenario that is without cover crop because we see that over time, the SOC is changing. It can be declining, it can be increasing. So comparing to quantify the effect of cover crop, we need a baseline. That is important. And let's take a look at how to calculate the SOC change. So SOC change is the change of SOC stock over time, and we can calculate it using this from this equation. And we need to identify first the input, which is primarily from crop, and it contains three different terms. The GPP is the gross primary productivity. That is the photosynthesis amount of carbon by the crop. And RA is a respiration of crop. So, and the harvest is the part of carbon that we harvest from the field. So GPP minus R respiration minus the harvested carbon, that will be the input of carbon for soil. And for the output part, it contains the respiration, heterotrophic respiration, and methane emission, which contains carbon, obviously, and also some leaching of carbon. So those two parts, input and output, can be used to calculate the change of SOC. And correspondingly, this chart on the left, the upper panel, shows different compositions of this SOC calculation. And we can see that the SOC change under a cover cropping scenario is higher than that under no cover crops. And to calculate the benefit of SOC by cover crops, we need to use the change of SOC with cover crop minus change of SOC without cover crop. That's what we talked about using a baseline. So this method is a difference in difference method. So that's important to have the side-by-side comparison. And the next practice is no-till and reduced tillage. So tillage is widely used in conventional agriculture because that's how you make the soil more more easier to plant and apply fertilizer. So in a conventional way, there will be different machines used for growing crops, including plowing machine, disking, cultivation, and then planting. But in reduced tillage and no-till, we will use less procedures, more simple procedure to grow crop. For reduced tillage, we will get rid of the plowing and disking, so only cultivating and planting steps. And for no-till, even cultivating is skipped, so there's only planting. Uh, but the one thing to mention is that no-till will need a different type of machine. So that will be a concern for many farmers because they need to switch the machine, and that's a big cost. And many times, so the government want, if they want to promote no-till, a machine, maybe incentives for machine is very important. So no-till, reduced till will leave the soil less disturbed compared to conventional till. You can see from this picture that conventional tillage has a great disturbance to soil. And for no-till conventional and reduced tillage, there will be less disturbance and more residue left on soil base surface. That will be a difference in terms of the surface temperature and also the exchange of water and gas. And for no-till and reduced tillage, uh, so there's a debate of the benefits of no-till on SOC. So in the beginning, I think the research community found some evidence. They collect field data and found that SOC increased in no-till soil. But later, there are more data and more detailed measurement collected, and they found, oh, it's only increased, SOC only increased in the topsoil, as we see that on the left side, it's it's a chart uh, of SOC change at different depths of soil. And the left diagram shows the change in the topsoil, which we can see that it's all increased across different studies. I think those represent different numbers represent data from different studies. And we see in the topsoil SOC all increased. But at the deeper soil, for example, at a 30 centimeter depth, all the data shows that SOC decreased. So it's important to acknowledge this difference because tillage will disturb soil in a way that it change the vertical distribution of soil particles. That's why it has a different responses at different depth. And here is a more detailed explanation of why uh, there is a debate around tillage and the effect of it on ISOC. So tillage will change actually it will change the depth of the soil of topsoil. It comparing to no-till, so the plow layer of tilled soil will increase, the depth of it will increase compared to no-till. So when you measure the soil, uh, if you take samples from both uh, sides to assert or to the same depth, it will actually comparing different soil aggregates. For example, on the left, the tilled soil, if you measure 30 centimeter, on the right side, for the no-till, the 30 centimeter actually becomes maybe 25 centimeter because uh it's it's more dense in no-till. And the comparison of the 30 centimeter is not a fair comparison. So that is a issue in terms of interpreting the data that collected. So almost all the data collected from field that measures SOC, they use the same soil depth for till and no-till comparison. So that uh, causes this we can see maybe it's misleading observation. And the next practice is about nitrogen fertilizer management. And I think there is also a previous seminar talk about digital agriculture. So that is very related to, and that is the core of nitrogen management. Because of precision agriculture, we can leverage technology to manage field within field level, uh, in terms of different resources more accurately and efficiently. Here, for example, a technology called variable rate fertilizer application. So it detects the variation of yield potential in the field, and according to the map, we can apply different level of fertilizer on the field, and that will produce outcome. Uh, so based on the outcome, the yield map, we see that in some area, even though we applied high nitrogen rate, it still produced low yield. So in that case, the next year, you should reduce the nitrogen amount in that small area. That will save you money and also reduce the nitrogen loss and produce this more it reduce the environmental impact of the nitrogen fertilizer. And another way, except using remote sensing to produce yield map, another way to manage fertilizer is through soil sampling. You can sample detailed soil and develop a map of soil health or soil fertility on a field, and based on that soil map, you can divide the field into different management zones, and that can be very useful in terms of nitrogen fertilizer management. And the next topic is about a tree crop. So, except cereal crop, there are also many tree crop, and we already mentioned the cashew and also oil palm. Those type of tree crops, one uh, big one significant issue is that we want to know the distribution and the change of the distribution of those tree crops. So in that case, remote sensing really came in as a helpful technology that can use to inform the distribution and expansion of tree crop plantation. So here I will give an example that from a study that is conducted by my lab mate. So it maps the cashew plantation in a country in Africa, Benin. It is a major producer of cashew. So to conduct this mapping, first, uh, there are some data collection processes in this specific region, and those data will be used to train a machine learning model. I think also there's a topic previously talked about machine learning, so that connects those different seminars. So the machine learning model will learn how to differentiate a cashew orchard or cashew patch from other type of tree patch. So after training, the model will be able to identify cashew from other type of land use. And here is the result that we find that cashew plantation area in Berlin almost doubled in 6 years. And also the growth of cashew plantation in protected areas increased more than half. And also half of those cashew plantations were in the low density, which means actually we don't need to maybe expand the area, but to increase the density of the plantation. So next I will go into the forestry management because of the time I will speed up a little bit. So for global deforestation, we see a decline in the forest area, but in terms of the net change in forest area, so comparing 2010 to 2000, we see that actually the net change in forest area decrease slowed down a little bit, which is a good sign, which means there are more reforestation that is happening. Meanwhile, the deforestation rate is increasing, still increasing. So here is a study in terms of uh, forestry management. I want to introduce some studies that's very interesting, and it's related to also greenhouse gas emission because tree cover and the forest are a major type of carbon stock in the land ecosystem and to quantify the amount of carbon that we are stored in forests or trees. We need to know the distribution of tree and also the height of the tree. So here, this study is using remote sensing technology to map tree covers. It maps the difference from previous study and this one is that it can do actually mapping for individual trees. So besides forest, that is a very dense canopy as shown on the patch G and F. This method, this study also mapped out those individual trees as shown in those other patches in this diagram. So it found that actually more than one quarter, which 25% of the tree cover in Africa is actually found outside of those areas that was considered as forest. So it's a very surprising number. So it's important for this type of study and technology that use very high resolution remote sensing images in this tree cover mapping. And another study is concerning tree canopy height. So after we know that a certain canopy, the area of a tree canopy, we also want to know the height of the tree. And based on those two metric, we can roughly estimate the amount of carbon that stored in a tree and then scaled up to a forest. So this tree canopy height estimation, it's conducted in the Amazon region, and it's also using very high resolution remote sensing image, and it maps out the whole Amazon, and with the result we can see the height of trees of the canopy distribution in the whole region. So I think that's so far that's all part of the practices of sustainability agricultural management and also some practices to monitor the sustainability in forestry. And in the end of this seminar, I want to introduce the carbon market and a framework called MMRV. So we know that IPCC set some climate mitigation imperatives. The first one is cut emission by about 45% from the level in 2010. And the second one is to achieve net zero by 2050. And here, net zero is a goal, so for us to move on. But net zero doesn't mean that uh, you don't emit any greenhouse gases. It means every part of the greenhouse gas you emit, you should be able to uh, reduce the greenhouse gas in another form and at this within the same time frame. So that is the meaning of net zero goal. But for many companies or countries, it's not feasible to reduce the emissions today. So that's where carbon credits can come in. So carbon credit, it is 1 ton of carbon dioxide of greenhouse gas emission that is being reduced or avoided by a mitigation activity. And what is a carbon market? It is actually the market that where carbon credits is being traded. So company and the countries can find opportunities from other parties like farmers and forestry owners to buy the carbon credits that they need to reduce from their emission activities. So that whole cycle forms a carbon market. Um, Companies and parties that need carbon credits will pay for those parties that produced carbon credits. And MMRV is a framework that being used in the carbon market for measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verification. Those processes are important because it is a key to guarantee the accuracy, transparency, and the reliability of those carbon credits. And for each key component, there are some description, but I think I'd like to elaborate them using this chart on the left. So for let's say a project, carbon mitigation project, it will contain two periods, the crediting periods and the monitoring periods. So in the crediting period, first data will be collected after the project initiated. So we need to do measurement and field quantification to quantify the amount of carbon credits this project is aiming for. And then a third party will conduct the verification to ensure that the method that is used for the measurement is correct, and the amount of the carbon credits is actually is within reasonable uncertainty. So that's the verification and the measurement. And the reporting is consisting of several different reporting period. So it usually goes from 1 year to 5 year cycle, and you need to keep reporting your verification and the measurement procedure during the crediting period. And after that period, there will be an ongoing monitoring period to ensure that there is no reversal of the carbon credits that created. If there is reversal, which means the actually carbon credits should be reduced from the initial estimates. So that is the whole overview of the MMRV framework. And I think, yeah, this will be the last page of my slide. And as a conclusion, that we learned about the cropping systems and challenges associated with conventional agriculture. And we learned about the principal practices of sustainable management in agriculture and some studies in forestry management. And we also learned about the carbon market and MMRV. And also importantly, I hope maybe if there should be something you take away from this seminar, that is some metrics like global warming potential, nitrogen use efficiency, and SOC benefit, carbon credits. Those can be important metrics you can use in the future of your research. Yeah, and that's all. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you, Yufeng. Very cool.
Thank
This was a
you.
very comprehensive overview of sustainable ag and forestry. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Yufeng?
Yeah, please go on and unmute.
Hi. I was really interested in that slide that was looking at soil organic matter.
Hmm.
Was Did I see that right? That the data shows that soil organic matter is higher in tilled soil. Is that what that was showing?
Wait, can you tell me which
Yeah.
slide?
Okay. The impact of no-till. Oh, okay. So is that in compared to tillage?
Yeah,
So
it's
going
com
from tillage to no-till.
yeah, it's comparing conventional tillage to no-till.
So that we saw that, or they saw that when they switched from a tillage system to a no-till system, that soil organic matter decreased at deeper depths.
Yes, yes.
Would
And
it, Oh, sorry. I was just curious about that because I'm a soil science major. And did they look at all if that was due to the increase of anaerobic bacteria, which encapsulate organic matter? And I was just curious when they measured it, did they crush the aggregates to try to get the mineralization rates? Or did they look at any other factors that might be related to that other than the difference in bulk density?
yes, yes. So yeah, I think to answer your question, there are two parts. The first part I want to mention is that when they measure the SOC of no-till and conventional till, it's usually measured in a way that is a parallel setup. So they will randomly split some field into no-till and conventional tillage and measure those two groups side by side. And as it is different from maybe what we expect to convert a conventional tillage to no-till, then measure over time. So that is a different type of setup. So from most all of the measurement studies that I've seen, they all do this space for time method, which means they are using different location to compare the no-till and the conventional tillage uh, in the same time frame. So that is the first thing I want to mention. And for the measurement, for the specific measurement details, I don't know the details in each studies how they measured the SOC, but I believe they are using the most common ways like uh, combustion and some other type of ways. But they are for the I think those measurement studies they are conducted by majorly um, experts from those field. So they should be able to following standard protocols for the measurements. Usually, I think the most common method is dry combustion. If that is the question you were asking, how they conduct it. And for details, I think they will do decompose and degrade of the soil particles. But I'm not sure if each of the individual studies are doing that exactly the same and using the same method. There can be different methods used, but I think uh, they are following certain standards that they have, yeah, in terms of the measurements. And they do see that like across study and across time, they do see that at different depths of soil, the responses of no-till is different. So majorly it's accumulating more carbons on the top, but in deeper soil, it's decreasing. I think the an important thing is we need to calculate the whole stock of SOC when it comes to uh, comparing the SOC. So that means we should, as possible as we can, we should measure to a deep soil as we can, possible as we can, so that the entire soil profile is measured. That will ensure that the SOC comparison is fair. As long as we are not measuring a deep soil, it will be an issue that the mass or we are measuring across soil till and no-till are different as shown here, because tillage will expand the soil depth. So the same depth measure comparison is not fair. That's an issue. And it's a little bit complicated. Yeah, it's definitely related to the bulk density and the soil SOC concentration, but it's hard to figure out what's a fair depth for comparing each. Then a solution is that that's measure as deep as we can, so we can get the whole amount of SOC in the soil. Yeah, thanks for this question. I think it's very insightful.
Thank you, everyone. I think we are a little over time today, but Yufeng, if you can hang around for a few minutes, if that works for you. Otherwise, I
Yeah,
will
it works.
share your email in the chat box here so that students can follow up with you. But we just want
Yeah,
to thank
I will type my email. Oh, you already did. Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you, everyone. Next week we are not meeting because it is the universities will be closed, but we will be meeting the following week, already in December. So, yeah, we'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. But have a restful break, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.